All right, I think we are live. Live we are. Welcome, everybody. This is the GrowBrain podcast, episode 1. It's not the first episode of a podcast that John and I have done together, but it is the first of this type in this format and on this channel. So we're excited to get this going and kind of resurrect an old idea that we had a long time ago. And we have both repented of our evil ways and decided this is something that we actually wanted to get into and do a little bit more of. So, well, John and I have actually been talking a little bit more lately, but I'm excited. In fact, we were talking about something before we got going, which I think is interesting and a good thing to talk about. And that's starting your day and some of the things that happen when you're trying to get your day started. My biggest problem, I think, and John, I was super interested to hear what you have to say about this, but a lot of times I try too hard to not be rah-rah. Like I'm like the anti-rah-rah. But the problem is there's some stuff that the rah-rah people do that is really good. Like starting your day, right? You know what I mean? Like getting a good, you mentioned listening to Gorillas, which I as soon as I heard that let's re-listen to, I was like, yes, Gorillas always gets me going. That's a good way to get started. In fact, let's do it this way. What is, if you were to pick the perfect start to your day that would just put you in the right mindset, the right mood, that would get everything going, what does it look like?
Talking to like the music, is that what you used to say?
Anything, yeah. What is it? What is it that like that gets you in the right mindset to like be creative or to be productive or?
Well, let me say that I've never quite found exactly the right mix. That I think is consistently repeatable. Years ago, I read a great book called The Miracle Morning. I can't think of the guy's name, but he had a rough go at things and would section out his morning kind of in a modular way. And he's like meditation, planning my day. He's got these things he does. He gets up really early and does these things before anybody else is up and moving. First off, that's something, getting up before everybody else is something I've struggled with for years. I'm a night owl. I stay up too late. The only time I get any quiet time is when the kids are in bed and my wife's asleep, and then I'm working.
Oh, totally.
So
I know exactly what you mean.
I had a lot of hopes for reading that book. And there's a lot of great ideas in it, so I highly recommend it. Although I can say that I haven't done any of the ideas. Like I started doing a couple of them, but as with anything, you start doing new things. Like we did meditation I did it for 90 days. Every day we did one meditation at least. And the whole idea of and that's something we talk about in the GrowBrain principles, is not breaking the chain, finding something you're going to do.
Right.
And if you break the chain, you whether it's tick marks or whatever it is you're doing, however you're measuring, that you're doing it every day. And then if you don't do it any one given 24-hour period, you start over from zero. And the goal is to get to 100 or 1,000 or whatever that number needs to be for you.
Right.
100's a good place to start. And of course with the sorry, I've got one of my kids just out of view doing some funky dance, like right here.
Another point that we could make here live in real time is sometimes there's just stuff you can't control.
Yeah.
As much as you think you are in control.
Yeah, working at home, there's a lot less control.
Yeah. Well, working at home with children.
With children, yeah. Yeah,
I have the benefit of none of those. Except
you got a furry child.
He just sits there and does nothing, so it's perfect.
Yeah. So anyway, I tell you that one of my favorite songs to start my day with is I'm not even a big fan of the band. I like the band. I've just never been. I've never done a whole lot of not followed them great. Those Saint Motel's song "Move."
I don't even know that song.
It's
I don't know by this title anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard it. I mean, I don't listen to the radio too terribly much, but it was on the radio for like 18 months straight. That seems like.
Oh, nice.
So, and that's the reason that I don't listen to the radio, because I like a song.
Mind.
What's that?
That tends to solidify it in your mind when it's on the radio that often.
Yeah, and that's that's one reason I don't listen to the radio, is because I like a song, and the next thing I know, everybody's tired of it, and I'm not tired of it yet, because I listen to it when I want to.
It's like, wait, no, keep playing it. It's a great song. No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
But anyway, that song is a great way to start the day. And I was going to play that one, and then I looked up my playlist, and I was already listening to Gorillaz yesterday. I'm like, I'm just going to continue that. I'm going to start that one over again, and because that got some good, good stuff going on. Even the new stuff. The new stuff I wasn't so sure about, but it's grown on me pretty well.
Yeah, they're a group that that I feel like they hit a very particular stride with like the emotions that they evoke. This is going to get way too philosophical for talking about the.
Got a hanger. Sorry, kids are messing.
But I feel like every time I listen to them, they're very similar to like almost like dubstep or that, like you can go to Spotify and they have like the brain food playlists where it's
yeah
just beats, that kind of thing. Like that's something with them that I've always felt like is something that they do really well, which I think is fun. But yeah, I think one of the things, and you have to tell me what you think about this. One of the things that's always been a problem for me is I really enjoy systems and I really enjoy structure, but I also really hate it. Right? Like
the inflexibility of it. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I was thinking about it this morning. I think about this just about every morning, but just in different words. But this morning, this is the way I thought about it. I need to be free. I need to be free. But at the same time, like and then my mind thought that like 2 seconds after my mind thought, I really need to get into more of a system structure in the way that my day goes, because I need to make sure that I'm getting everything done that I need to. So I have these two halves of me. One that just really wants, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. And in 13 minutes, an alarm's going to go off that's going to say, okay, now do this. And then another one's going to do this. And then all that. But then there's this other part of me that knows that as soon as I implement something like that, I'm going to hate it.
Yeah.
Just hate it. And so now the thing is, it's me. I'm the one that set the rules and I know why, but I don't want to do it because I want to be free to do what I want to do in the moment. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things that's always been a problem for me is sticking to sticking to my own rules. If I make a rule for myself, I gotta, actually stick with it.
It's like, I think some of that is kind of like a diet. And I'm not a big dieter. I think I've done 2 in my life. And, but each of those diets had, flaws in them. And the flaw was human nature. And if you cheat on your diet, then you're cheating on yourself. But if you can't maintain the rigidity of the diet, then the diet's going to fail anyway. So you have to be able to allow yourself some flexibility to be able to, like I said, the 100 days, not break the chain. And part of life is breaking the chain,
Right. Yeah.
It's accepting that setback, saying I have to start over from the beginning after this because I need to do this other thing today. And that's just how it's going to be.
Right.
Well, and not treating that as failure.
I think it's funny that you bring up diets because that's another thing that I hate. And actually, I hate it for a very specific reason, and that is, it's actually, interestingly enough, where I'm kind of feeling this thought out as we go. But any of you, but none of the people watching this will know the pre-Muay Thai Brett, but I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now, which admittedly it's a large number for somebody my size, but it's not. I mean, I'm not one of these people that's lost a couple.
I remember you at that point. You had what I've been there plenty of times. The sedentary young body.
Yes.
Not active enough, but not overweight. But there was some. You float better than other guys that work out every day.
Yeah. Yes. I had. There was some padding. A bit of insulation, we'll call it. More to love, if you will. But interestingly enough, my journey, which I'm not a fitness professional, so I don't know really the science behind all this, but my journey had very, very little to do with my diet. In fact, I didn't change my diet at all. In fact, I ate worse. But there's an interesting, so for me, It's not, I don't think that that the diet doesn't have the effect that you need it to have. Like, I still think that diet probably is more important in terms of the effect that it can have on the way that you look and on your health and all that kind of stuff. And it can have a more direct impact. I think the problem with diet is that I'm always fighting myself.
Right.
And I hate fighting myself because I don't know if you're this way as well. I'm really good at convincing myself to do or not do things. Like really, really, really good. I have this whole logical framework in my mind, and I trust myself a lot. So whenever I say this is the way you should do things, usually I'm like, done. You know? And so I found that my way of overcoming that problem, because even since I started doing Muay Thai, that there's been fluctuations where if I train less, I tend to gain weight because I'm training less. Because still I don't have
push
the
forward
underlying.
you change that lever,
Yeah. Well, because could be that the training is what keeps me in shape, not the diet.
Right.
The training actually makes up for the diet. In fact, the last 3 fights that I had, these last 3 that were right in a row, I had to eat more. Like I was losing weight in the training camps too fast, and I was going to come in too far underweight. And so I had to like slow down the weight loss because I was training that much more.
Right.
And so I had the opposite of no restrictions. I was being told, no. You need to eat more junk food.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose the weight that fast and come in 7 pounds under.
Yeah.
Because not that it, at the end of the day, not that it would have really made that much of a difference in the outcome of the fight. It's more just in California, there are legal restrictions on how much of a weight spread there can be in a fight. So anyway.
Yeah. And then, I've never been a big fighter, but I know toe to toe, if all things are equal except for the weight, skill levels equal, the heavier guy is going to win.
Heavier guy wins every time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just physics.
Yep. And I'm not really a fan of losing, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's interesting though that I mean that's essentially it's like a hack, like a workaround. If we look at it that way, my training for me, it's a way for me to get around having to diet because I love the training. Like training for a fight is the most physically difficult thing that I've ever done. But it's also my favorite thing in the world. Like if I didn't have to worry about money, I would always be training for a fight. Because I feel like there's no other motivation that's quite as strong as, yeah, but in 6 weeks you're going to get in the ring and the other dude will have trained.
Yeah.
He's going to be ready. So if you're not, bye-bye. You know what I mean? You're going to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Not that it's like fear that pushes it, but I think, that sort of underlying aspect of it, it makes, I'm not fighting myself to go and train. That's, I think, the big point is that when I train to fight, I'm going with the flow of my own desires. And maybe the core issue that we should talk about here is that I need to be less about going with my own desires and like have some discipline. But I just don't feel like that's as important as an entire set of generations of people have said it is. I don't know.
What is it you think is not as important?
Well, like depriving yourself of things that you want for the sake of some arbitrary what's standard, like some standard that was set by somebody else.
Okay.
And needing to like live up, like we talk a lot about like honor and duty. I have a real problem. And again, this is probably the core of my issue is I have a problem with the concept of duty because it seems to me like it's not that I don't feel responsible for things. That's not what I'm saying. It's just when what I'm supposed to feel responsible for, I had no input in deciding. I feel like, why?
So I think
Why?
what you're describing is less duty and more expectations.
There you go. Okay.
Because duty, in my mind, is inward. It's something you decide is something that you take responsible. You take ownership, even though you're something you're not responsible for. It's not something that's not your fault, but you take responsibility for it. I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And
Okay. I like that.
I think duty is something we decide upon ourselves, but that's an issue that my lovely wife has with a lot with her family from time to time, is that she gets this sense of expectation of what is things are expected of her, and some of them are real, some of them aren't, but they're there. She's thinking about them regardless, and so I think when other people expect things of me, and I definitely do, I definitely lean towards obliging them. It's for the most part, I've learned how to say no a bit more the older I get, but that was the thing with my mom and I have had a tenuous relationship for a while, and once, and a lot of it comes from her, me thinking of her expectations. And finally, I had a conversation with her one day. I said, "Mom, listen, I love you, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. Just because I don't do what you say doesn't mean that I'm not listening.
Right.
I'm still going to make my own choices, and I've come to terms with that. And I'm just letting you know that so that we can move past this roadblock that we have."
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's been great.
Yeah.
Like it's been, she was like, okay.
Yeah. And I think it's good, it's good on her for not doing what I think the default response is, which is you're a terrible person and I don't want to talk to you again.
I'm your mom. You should do what I say. I know better than you, kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. Right.
No, I didn't
Well,
get
and I
any of
think
that.
for both of you, I mean, props to you as well for being able to stand up and say it. I mean, you might remember, I don't know if you and I have ever specifically talked about this, but about 2 years ago, I have this personal podcast that I do that I haven't recorded for in a year. But I made this full episode on how I left the Mormon church. And that was my indirect passive aggressive way of doing exactly that. But I didn't have, for lack of a better term, I didn't have the balls to like just go to them and say, this is what's going on. Because clearly that whole thing was meant for my family.
Yeah.
Because I was
I
just
remember
getting
the time. I mean, you and I talked about it, when we went out and played airsoft that day. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize all that was going on.
Oh, that's right. That is
And,
right. Wow. Yeah, I totally forgot that it was then that we talked about it since then. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was in Utah for my nephew's wedding.
I remember that.
So
Yeah.
I was in the middle. I was with all my family at that time.
Yeah.
And luckily, like they took, I mean, we don't really need to go into the details, that this isn't that important, but they took it. Maybe the point here is that people take things better than you think they will. Because my family took it for the most part really well. I have one sister that I'm pretty sure has written me off. But I don't know if she's written me off specifically or just the rest of the family. Not quite sure, because there's like little to no communication. But yeah, one of the things that ended up happening with me is that I've with my family is I've gotten to this point where we talk about duty, and I like that you made the distinction between duty and expectation, because I think in everybody's mind that is a healthier way to look at the distinction, because I think the two are conflated most of the time. Like if you were to say, what's the difference between duty and expectation, people wouldn't really be able to.
Well, there's definitely some overlap.
Yeah, but I mean, just in the way that people think about the word association, if you say duty, what they're going to describe to you is the expectation that society has put on them. So duty for a man, for example, is you have a duty to provide for your family, right? And I'm not saying that I disagree with that particular expectation of society, because I feel like
it's kind of a good thing to do.
Yeah, well, and also if you don't feel that if you don't feel that internally, then there's other issues.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the duty was passed around in the religion. When I was Mormon, that was passed around often as like, here's all the stuff that somebody else decided that because you're a man that you had no control over, and because you're a Mormon, which you also had no control over, you are now responsible for.
Yeah.
And it was like, am I? Really? Like,
It was
you just
funny
get
that
to,
you said that you're a Mormon, which you had no control over. That's that's a funny thing about religion is, people don't choose.
yeah.
People spend more energy choosing what kind of car they're going to drive than what religion they're going to be. They
Right.
don't test drive any other religions. This is what their parents told them is way it is, and they don't look.
Yeah. They don't even want to, like, I love that you said test drive, because when you test drive a car, you're trying to find the best car, and it might not be the one
The
you're
best car
driving,
for
and you know
you.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, which car do you want? It's like, well, here's a Honda Civic, and this is the Honda Civic that you've been given, and you can drive it, and that's fine. But there's also all these other cars that you might like, and you're like, nope, I'm good with the Honda Civic, even though there's like Maserati over there, there's a Ferrari over here, there's a motorcycle over here, there's a Jeep over here, and you're like, nope, Honda Civic's good for me for my whole life, forever.
That's what
No
my parents
questions
drove.
asked.
I'm going to keep driving this. That's what they say.
My
This is the
parents
best car.
drove. Exactly. In fact, I'm not trying to throw my brother under the bus here, but Brad drove a Honda Civic until about 4 years ago.
Okay.
He's very successful. He makes a lot of money.
Sure he does.
And with 6th Division, and he drove a Honda Civic, and he got the same. He had a Honda Civic before he got married, and he's just gotten the latest model of Honda Civic. And in his mind, and I know this is the way that his mind works, because he and I, as much as I hate this, are like the same person essentially. So I can read his thoughts because I know how I would think. His thought was, well, no, this is fine. I have this. It works well for me. And I don't see any need to like upgrade or change. And it's consistent. I know what the payment's going to be. I know that it's within my budget. It's what I'm used to. And, just like what we're talking about, not really trying to branch out at all, probably a little bit because of the fear of the unknown, but also just, there's that underlying default level of, don't question the status quo. Just go with what you've always done, and you'll be fine. Don't ask questions. Don't try and doubt things. Just go with it.
Yeah.
And then I bought a BMW, and about a month later, he bought an Audi.
That's funny.
There might be something interesting there about sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
But I just think he felt, oh well, I know I'm making more than Brett. It can't be.
I can't have him out car me.
Yeah. Well, especially because our younger brother, Craig, had bought my dad bought it for him, but he had a BMW. It was an old, like a 2009, but like a 5 Series, like pimped out, nice looking car.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of was rubbing Brad the wrong way for a long time. And then I bought mine, and he was like, all right, no more of this.
That's funny what sibling rivalry does,
Right. But I do like that analogy of test driving a car, because I think it's true not just of religion, but of like anything. You have these thoughts and these life philosophies that you're kind of born into, and you never question them. Like this happens all the time. Like I'm surprised. I don't think I'm actually that surprised, but I feel like a lot of the times when I run into people and I talk to people about things, there are basic life assumptions that they've made, and they're just accepting.
Mm-hmm.
Which I am always trying to like improve the way that I'm thinking, and I'm always questioning my own assumptions. And so
I like being challenged on my assumptions. When I get proved wrong, people get mad about getting proved wrong. I like it. I may be annoyed with it at first because I've thought this thing for so long, and it turns out somebody's, show me a different path, different way of thinking, that I'm like, yeah, that's better. that's right. I've been wrong.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like and I probably hold on to the bitterness for a little bit longer, but eventually that's the way my mind works. Is I'm always like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Because I have this underlying I have this underlying philosophy that we all, and I haven't really put this into, I haven't structured this and like systematized it, but I have this every time I think about like a philosophical concept or anything along those lines, I always default to we're both right. We just got to find out how. Because I feel like everybody's drawing on the same, this is going to get metaphysical for a second, so just go with me. I feel like we're all drawing on from the same place. We're all coming from the same set of resources because our minds, whether it's some external source that we're pulling from, because, you know, we have access to like if you're religious, you would probably call it like your spirit, right? That all everybody's spirit comes from one place. If, you know, if you're a little bit more humanist, it's probably like the human collective, right? We all come from the same place. Maybe it's like the universe, whatever it is. I feel like we're all drawing on we're all trying to solve the same problem. And we all just have a different, like we're all trying to write the same essay, but some of us have a blue colored pencil and some of us have a black colored pen and some of us have markers and some of us are writing on our hand and some of us are writing on a computer, right? We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to figure out the same problems and get to the same end result. But we're just doing it with different implements because we have different, you know, we were born in a different situation or we had different parents, you know, whatever it is. So I feel like because we're all trying to do the same thing and we're all essentially drawing from the same pool of resources, even though some pieces might be missing, I feel like we're all like, the fact that we have a thought puts us in, you know, there's an explanation for the way that everybody thinks. And obviously there are some situations where two thoughts are absolutely in conflict with each other. But when it comes to people, like I'm obviously discounting anybody who's not really thinking about things, but anybody who breaks through and puts the time and effort and really questions themselves, I feel like we're all trying to solve the same problem. Like you think about philosophers, and there's some even like professional philosophers. When I was in college, one of my things that I kept seeing was they would say, okay, here's what this guy says, and here's what this guy says, and would argue which one is right. And I was like, well, they're both right. We're just looking at it with a smaller scope. We're just zoomed in. So we're trying to say this one is right or this one is right because, you know, the specifics of the situation say that it can only be one. Like, for example, in philosophy, there are two camps on whether what's the word I'm looking for? Altruism is real. Is it possible to be altruistic? Right. So you have a lot of people that say, no, you can't be altruistic because at the core of every action, there is self-centered self-interest. Like you only do things because it's going to benefit you in some way. Like you can't actually, in fact, this is the large majority of philosophers at that time were saying, no, you can't. Every decision you make, there's some benefit, even if the benefit is God's going to like that I did this. Like I'm going to be in a better place, even though I don't want to do this. I have this self-centered, selfish desire to look good in God's eyes. So I'm going to do it for that reason. Right. But then there's another guy that came by and he said, no, you can. And he has this very technical way of laying it out, saying the only way that you can be altruistic is if you do something for someone else's benefit and not yours. And he breaks down how if you make a decision now that's going to benefit future you, but doesn't benefit present you, then that counts as doing something for someone else because the future you is actually a different person, right? So he goes through this whole thing. But the truth is, the way that I saw it is that they're both right, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still you, the identity of you, you're still the same person, even though a lot of stuff may have changed. So you're still doing things for your own benefit, but at the same time, that concept of being able to be altruistic, I think, still fits. But my issue with it was the lens was too focused. Like the point that everybody was trying to get at is whether or not you can do things for somebody else's benefit versus only your own benefit. And I think the core question is actually something a little deeper, which is what counts as like what counts as you versus someone else. right? Because what's the difference between me as a physical person and somebody else from an altruistic standpoint? You know what I mean?
It's interesting because it comes down to semantics oftentimes.
Right.
The definition of a word. There was an article thing on Facebook the other day between two people that I know. They were as often happens on the internet, as people lose their respectfulness. um, and the story was this restaurant in Virginia where let's see what happened. I can't remember what happened, but somebody did try to get a grasp of what happened, but it had to do with the president and somebody who worked for the president, and they wouldn't serve that person in their restaurant. And
yes,
and then somebody responded to that with what somebody else described as an act of terrorism. And the person laughed. Somebody else laughed at him and said that if you think this is terrorism, you're an idiot. And hang on a second. I got these swag shirts I have to keep at my desk, and I throw them at my son when he's getting too loud playing Fortnite. That was I don't know what shirt that was actually, but so and the funny thing is, we talk about semantics. That's the reason I'm bringing this up, is we're talking about semantics and how and I thought, well, what exactly is terrorism? I know what I think it is. Guys in a burqa with a machete cutting somebody's head off, or crashing airplanes into high rises, or blowing themselves up in front of a crowd.
Right.
But the actual definition of terrorism is somebody who, basically, somebody who does something to somebody else for political, against somebody else as a matter of control for political gain or something like that. And it exactly fit this small, like they threw some sort of feces on the front of the restaurant. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And it was specifically, it fit the exact definition of terrorism.
Yeah.
And I'm like, actually, I got in, chimed in. I said, actually, here's the definition of terrorism. You're berating this person over them calling this terrorism, and I didn't think it was terrorism either, but it is. So
yeah,
there you go. And it's just semantics, because words all have meaning, and we give words different meaning beyond the scope of what they actually mean.
Right. Well, and because there's this, again, because I think that speaks back to the collective aspect of it, like I was talking about. Like, there's more than just you and your relationship with whatever idea, because we as a human race have decided, and I didn't have anything to do with this, but what collectively, for the sake of efficiency, we decided that we're going to use words, and words are going to have meaning, and this is what this word means. And when we establish our own little definition of a particular word or concept, and then try and project that onto somebody else, we're no longer even having the same conversation. So no wonder we're arguing, right? No wonder we're like fighting with each other, and especially in this situation, about whether it is terrorism or it isn't, or you're a smart person or you're a dumb person. Because if I have this whole worldview that says, this is what this means, this is what this means, and this is what this means, but the person I'm talking to has the same words, but they mean different things.
Right.
You can't say that's terrorism, and then because he or she is just going to say, no, it's not. And you're just going to go back and forth. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Until you both decide, when I say terrorism, this is what I mean. And he or she says, oh, yeah. Okay. So now that we know that that's what you mean when you say terrorism, now I know that I actually agree with you. Right. Versus like everybody approaching every situation from everybody else should think the way that I think, because nobody does. Like,
yeah. Now, I say, when it comes to the definition of a word, we should all think the same, as far as something very finite and well defined.
Right.
Because I felt, I was like in that situation, I thought, yeah, that's stupid that she's calling it terrorism. But then I thought, I don't know that I can actually define terrorism. I know what I think in my head. I know what images come into my mind. So that's why I had to go look it up. And that's one thing, as people speak based on what they think, and rather than and not what they know. They think they know.
Right. Well, and it comes from an emotional place, because the person who said that's not terrorism is speaking not about terrorism, but about making a statement. So he shouldn't have even used the word terrorism, because that's not what what he was trying to convey. Because he or she would have been, had some emotion around, well, this is right. What the person did throwing the feces at because it's this stupid escalation where these people don't like this guy because he did something. It's the same. We have the same issue every 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years ago, it was the gay couple in Seattle that the cupcake maker wouldn't do their wedding.
Yep.
Everybody freaked out.
I still keep hearing about that one. I still keep hearing it. It still pops up in the news every now and then.
I reserve the right to refuse business to anyone. It was the same thing. Now it's just political.
Yeah.
Because everybody's jumping on the hate Trump bandwagon, which whatever. I'm not going to get into my own politics about it, because to be honest with you, this is going to sound very white privilege of me, but what difference does it make to somebody? Like, I'm not going to get in and wade in and fight with people over the thing, because I didn't notice the difference from Bush 2 to Obama for 8 years, and I didn't notice a difference. I haven't noticed a difference yet from Obama to now. So yeah. I'm uniquely unqualified to have anything to say about the whole thing.
And then there's always correlation that causation doesn't equal correlation kind of stuff. Yeah. that happens, and when something happens, I remember I would get annoyed with our President Barack Obama. I would get annoyed with him with taking credit for the stuff that he had really little to do with.
Yeah.
But that's just a political thing. That's just that's something that if he's your guy, then you give him credit for it, and if he's not your guy, you don't give him credit.
Right, and then the fight is over whether.
And there's no, if he's your guy, there's no questioning whether he did it. And if he's not your guy, there's no questioning whether he did it. Exactly. It's just you have your opinion, and you don't want to give credit where it's due, or where you think it's not due. And that's one thing in politics I'd like to see, is a whole lot less trying to claim credit for things and a whole lot more actually doing things.
Right.
And that's something we haven't had in this country for a long time. Is one of I think the key roles of any good president is going to be bringing people together and not dividing the country even further. And our current president has not done a good job with that. He's alienated the other side. Barack Obama alienated the other side. I mean, quite publicly in many occasions, both of them. Barack just said it in a much more veiled way. He was more skilled politician.
Yes,
but they were, and I don't think we've had a president in a long time that was good at bringing people together.
Right. Well, because there's gain to be had, whether it's political gain for power, or there. At the end of the day, what I've always said is that the president, we talk about the president too much. The president has very little to do with anything. He's just a figurehead.
More so here than in some other countries, but less than in some other countries too. It's kind of, I think we're a little bit middle of the road in that regard.
Yeah.
But the whole, and we don't need to get into any further than this, but the whole two-party system that we have is just, it creates conflict. It creates alienation. It's so much that's a problem with where we are with that right now. That,
totally.
And it's been, we've had a two-party system. The funny thing is, the two-party system we have, if you were to go, dial things back 80 years, the Republicans are what the Democrats are now, and vice versa.
Right.
They were on opposite sides of the fence. So people look back at these historical presidents and like, oh, this guy, he was a Democrat, so he was with us. No, he wasn't.
Right.
He would have been a Republican, or the thing is, some of these original, and of course I'm a libertarian, so I'm a little biased when I say this, but there's so much of what people, when I talk to people, what they truly believe is the libertarian point of view,
right?
With the exception of the far right wing individuals and the far left wing, because
but anytime you're far any wing, it's because you don't think.
Well, I think you think, but I think if you're that far adrift, then I think you do think, but you think in a really small bubble.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. You don't. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
put a lot of thought into it, but it's you know, their language only has 12 letters in it. You know, it's
right.
like
There you go.
it's
Good.
there's not enough
Which,
questioning.
by the way, that's not an intelligence thing that John just said. For anybody who happens to be listening, is going to get pissed off about it. It's not that you can't. You're illiterate. The point is,
No, no, not at
you're
all.
not thinking in terms of all of the available options. It's like my brother drove a Honda Civic forever and refused to consider the option that he might like something better, simply because he knew the Honda Civic and that's all he wanted to deal with. Or this, it's the same exact metaphor that applies for anybody who sticks in a religion even though they don't necessarily really believe it. It's because that's what my dad did and that's what his dad did and that's what I'm expected to do and that's what we're going to do.
That's that
And
last part you
how
said
often
is
do you
spot
find
on.
people say what?
That last part you said is spot on with communicate what I said. Like I hope I didn't offend anybody by the 12 letter statement, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like, you know, they don't have um and they don't want all the information. They think they have all the information that they need, and they're happy with that. And that's, if you're happy, and your happiness doesn't intrude on other people's happiness, that's basically a libertarian right there. But
Right.
that in and of itself, I think, is a huge thing. If you can be happy without stepping on others to get there, I think then you've found a place better than a lot of people have.
Right. Right.
And whether that's with your 12 letters or you're running with the, you know, another alphabet or whatever
Yeah,
that
well, because
is.
at the end of the day, the other thing too to remember is I talk about, like, I just love to throw my brother under the bus, so to speak. But he might have gone and tried a bunch of different cars and found out he liked the Honda Civic the best.
Yeah.
And so there, if that was going to be the case, then eventually it wouldn't have made a difference if he just stayed with it or not. So it's not that you go and try because absolutely you're going to make some other decision. It's because you go and you need to have put the thought in to have come to a conclusion and not have it given to you.
Yeah.
I think it's
When it comes, you know, the car thing and religion thing, you know, like that analogy I gave earlier, you know, if you were to go, you know, let's say I'm a Catholic and you know, I want to see what else is out there. I recognize, you know, as a Catholic, I'm not a Catholic, but I recognize as this religious person that there's a couple things that have always kind of like been a little rock in my shoe with this religion.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what else is, you know, being able, you know, having a healthy enough family relationship to be able to go comfortably let people know that you're looking at these other things,
Right.
instead of having to do it in secrecy. You know, that's the thing, is so many religions don't want you to look outside. You know, anything outside is bad. You can't look out there.
Right.
That would be suspect to me as a, you know, religious person. I mean, I grew up as a Lutheran, and that's actually was my pastor that kind of talked to me about, you know, these other religions, and he wasn't trying to sell me on another religion, but we were talking about different religions, and I was misunderstanding a few things on some of them, so he challenged me to go learn about these other religions.
Yeah.
And so when I was in college, I spent the next semester and a half reading every book I could find. I read the Book of Mormon when I was in college before I ever lived in Utah. And yeah, I read the Tao, the Quran, at least a translated version of the Quran that I could, you know, that I could understand.
Right.
And, you know, read the Bible, the King. I read 4 different versions of the Bible, and studied biblical Aramaic a little bit, trying to, like, I had this idea that I wanted to learn the original text of the Christian Bible.
Sure.
And I think anybody who is a religious person should maybe consider. There's 2 languages in the Bible. Most commonly, it's biblical Aramaic, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But
Greek.
I don't know if it was Greek or not. It was something offshoot of one of those things. Anyway, but any religion, if you're reading the book in your native language and it wasn't written in your native language, I highly challenge you to go read the original text as far back to the original as you can get, to figure out, because, you know, everything is corrupted by man.
Totally.
And translations of the Bible and religious texts are corrupted by man. So if you want to call yourself a Christian, I highly think that I suggest that you would be much more enlightened if you were to go back to the original stuff and being able to decide what it means to you instead of having somebody feed it to you.
Right. Yeah. removing as many media through which the concepts have to go
Yeah.
to get to you, because there's already you're already at a disadvantage, because even if you were sitting there with Matthew or Mark or Luke, the people that are actually writing them, and they were to tell it to you in your native language, and they were a fluent speaker of your native language, you and I have already established that people talking the same language don't understand each other.
Yeah.
We talk about terrorism, you use the word terrorism, which has a definition, and this is what the definition is. And this person over here is like, no, it's not that. And then they have a fight. And really, they're both operating on an incorrect definition of what that word actually means.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time.
Yeah. So when you're looking at a text, King James Version of the Bible, for example, you're looking at it through the lenses of all the people that have translated over the years, and then through your own lens of your own life experience.
By the way, it's not one translation or even two.
Right.
There's like
right.
six.
It's like it's deep,
Yeah.
And even religion itself, the things in there, in the Bible, that's the one I'm most familiar with because I grew up with it. There's things in the Bible that happen because of man. They weren't for God. They were under the pretense of being for God.
Yeah.
When the fish markets were faltering, and so they had Good Friday. Was it? Forgive me. It's been a long time. Is it Good Friday where you can't eat meat?
Lent.
Lent. So Lent.
I don't know what it is.
Forgive
I
me
should know. My girlfriend's Catholic.
ignorance.
She's gonna. If she ever watches this, she's gonna be so disappointed in me.
But whatever. I can't remember what that is. But it was not to do anything else but save the economic situation of the fish markets at the time.
Right.
And it's become a mainstay of several religions that do this thing every year. And the source of why they do it. And there's a lot. I've talked to some people that work in the church. I say the church, not the big C, but just in church, the Christian churches. I talked about this, and they're like, yeah, you're right, and I know this. But what it is I forget how they worded it, but it's something that you do. It's kind of like in the Mormon Church, the underwear thing.
Yeah.
To bring you back to the origin of your religion and the history and what it has more. It's more to do with that than what it says it is.
Right.
So that's kind of neat. It's still. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's not at all. I'm just saying, but if you're doing it, you should know why you're doing it. Yeah,
there is an important point there this was one of the things that really, really frustrated me in the Mormon Church, and I am not like most ex-Mormons. Most people go, and I'm kind of this way on purpose. Most people, when they leave the Mormon Church, they become violently opposed,
anti-Mormon.
Yeah. My story is much less dramatic. I just decided I didn't want to go to church anymore. So it's a much less fancy, much less loud pronouncement of, because there's a lot about the Mormon Church that I really like, and that if I'm honest, that I kind of miss. But one of the things that I do not miss is exactly what you're talking about, which is this idea that the rules that we live by, or the principles that we live by, or the ordinances that we participate in, or however you want to word it, they have meaning unto themselves, versus they are something that we do and we have no idea. We don't really know why. Or like what you're talking about, there's something that we do and the origin is in something totally different than what we preach. Like it's preached as God said, thou shalt not eat meat because it's the righteous thing to do. When that's not in the text. That's not what happened. There's a different purpose behind all of those. Like with Mormons, it always came back to word of wisdom. Everything in the Mormon Church, and I contend to this day that the word of wisdom, which by the way is about as far as you can get from canonical principles of religion as you can. Like it's something that came up, just like you say, because Joseph Smith's wife didn't like cleaning up the tobacco stains off the floor. And it turns out a lot of the health stuff that the Mormons have been doing, it's not a bad thing. But
No, that's not.
there's so much, it's become so canonical in the minds of the members of the church, the Mormon church, that when you start to talk about it in terms of what it actually is, which is like, be healthy. Like the word of wisdom, for anybody that doesn't know, Mormons don't drink coffee. They don't drink tea. I mean, fruit tea is fine, apparently, but like they don't drink black tea. They don't drink alcohol, and they don't smoke. That's essentially what most of the average Mormon would say. That's the word of wisdom. We don't do those 4 things. They couldn't tell you why, really. They don't know the health. They don't know the science behind it. They don't know any of that stuff. They would most likely would tell you because we have a prophet that told us not to, and that's why. But most of them would just say because God wants us to, which I still don't think is the truth, because there's nothing morally wrong with drinking or smoking, and there never has been and there never will be, right? It's a totally different situation. But the real issue is, as I see it, when you don't investigate those concepts like you're talking about, when you don't understand this is what's actually happening, this is why we're doing this, you get into a situation where a core principle, which is be healthy, take care of your physical body, gets distorted into those that drink and those that smoke and those that drink coffee are bad people.
Oh yeah. So example to that, Gavin, when he first started going to school here in Utah, my oldest son, who's now 20, almost 21, he was wearing a Mountain Dew shirt going to school, and he was chastised by his classmates. Told him that one kid told him he was gonna burn in hell, for drinking Mountain Dew. And with him drinking this stuff,
I just want to break that down for a second, because this is one thing that I am uniquely qualified to talk about, because I spent so much of my adult life and my childhood in this and being indoctrinated in this way. So just to give everyone an idea. So I talked about coffee and tea. Okay. Now, because Mormons don't know and refuse to go to think about what exactly is the reason behind this, and maybe there isn't really a reason, and maybe we just need to do it and shut up about it. What they did is they decided, what's something that coffee and tea have in common? Caffeine. Okay, so we're going to create a cultural rule in the Mormon church that says the reason why we don't drink coffee and tea is because there's caffeine in it, which means caffeine is no good across the board. So in the state of Utah, in more places than it should be the case, you can't buy caffeinated beverages. And if you do, for a long time, it was like buying caffeinated beverages was bad. My mom, we weren't allowed to drink Mountain Dew. We weren't allowed to drink Coke or Dr. Pepper. It was a bad thing. Now, small caveat. You probably shouldn't drink those anyway, because they'll kill you. But for other reasons, it has nothing to do with
sugar is more of a problem than the caffeine.
The sugar is the problem. It's not the caffeine. In fact, there's plenty of, and anytime there would be science, there would be these scientific studies that would come out and say, having a beer once a week is actually good for your health, or having red wine with dinner is actually good for your health because of the antioxidants, or like coffee is good for you in the morning because of the digestive blah, blah, blah. There would always be some counter scientific argument that somebody in the church would come up with to kind of counter that. But getting back to your point, to what you're saying about your son, it's to the point where this offshoot of the offshoot of the offshoot concept has created so much animosity and so much like religious zeal that they pay more attention to whether or not you're drinking coffee or not versus, some of the more basic core actual tenets of the religion. Like, are you being a dick right now? Right?
Thou shalt not judge.
If there is any consistent, steady theme through all religions, it's don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me say this. So I like I said, I read all these religious texts back in college, and that's where I kind of put together what I thought they really, if you boil it all down to one thing, and that one thing has become my own philosophy, and it's changed once since I've put it out there. Initially, it was just simply, in the words of Spike Lee, do the right thing. And that's a subjective thing. So to take a little bit of subjectivity out of it, I don't know if it really does take subjectivity out of it, but it clarifies what that means to me anyway, is do the right thing even when it hurts. And that is the simple philosophy that I live my life by. And it's it's worked out pretty dang well for how I feel about. I'm not saying like it's made me a huge success or anything, or it's made me lots of money. That's not what it's about. It's made me like who I am.
Sure.
Um,
Totally.
and it wasn't like when I came up with that philosophy, that's when I started doing the right thing. I've always kind of felt the obligation to do the right thing. When nobody's looking, do the right thing when there was an interview I was on my way to, and I see this woman who's got a flat tire on the side of the road, and obviously she was a little distraught, and so I pulled over and helped her. I missed the interview. The company was pissed, and they didn't ever talk to me. They didn't want anything to do with me after that, and that was fine. I was like, all right, if that's how I did the right thing, and that's what kept me from maybe working in this terrible place.
Yeah.
That
where you probably would have hated anyway.
Yeah, and so I don't begrudge her for being in my life to help her that day, and that's something I'm the guy who's, if there's somebody on the side of the other day, not the other day, it was snowing, so it wasn't the other day, but it was a few months ago. I was driving north on I-15 here, and there was this kind of sketchy looking dude in a nasty looking outfit. Looks like he was dirty as heck, and I'm driving in my nice car, and but it's like sleeting. Swag shirt. It's sleeting, and he's not have a raincoat on, and so I pull over and give him a ride.
Yeah.
I know my dad would have been like, "What are you doing?"
Oh yeah.
But so and he didn't need to go very far. He was going back to the broken down car that he and his buddy were in, and I offered to, if they, in this day and age, everybody has a cell phone, so I know I didn't need to offer them, my phone, but I did.
Yeah.
I said, can I call you a tow truck? What can I do to help you? And it's just, that's, so, I could have just driven right by. I was obviously going somewhere.
Right.
And usually when people are going somewhere, they've got a timetable. And this was changing my timetable, but you know what? Helping somebody is one of the most important things that I think somebody can do. Even if it's for nothing else other than it just changes their perception for a little bit, it might influence them to help somebody else at some point in time.
Right.
And who knows who that might be and what ripple effect you've just caused.
Right.
But there's you can create positive ripple effects, you can create negative ripple effects. You want to be, I think most people should be the person that creates a positive effect, and because that changes the world for the better.
Totally.
And
well, I think so.
I
think you put it beautifully. Obviously, I'm a little bit more crass in the way that I project it, but I think you and I are saying the same thing. You say do the right thing even when it hurts. I say don't be a dick. But it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The same core concept.
Choose to be good to other people.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is how often you can attribute the attributes of the group that you're part of to yourself, even if you don't deserve them. So one thing that happens all the time is you can believe what we just said and what John just went through, and you can think, oh yeah, no, I believe all that stuff's true. But if you personally aren't, regardless of what your religion tells you to do, regardless of what your worldview tells you to do, your politics, whatever it is, if you aren't actually like trying actively, regardless of what it looks like, regardless of everything else, if you're not actively trying to live what you believe, then you're a hypocrite.
Well, you don't believe it.
Yeah, you don't. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, you're a you say you believe it, but you don't actually.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is giving lip service to the idea because you want to say, oh no, I'm a Mormon, I'm covered, or no, I'm Catholic, or I'm Lutheran, or I'm a Buddhist, whatever it is. I'm covered because Buddhists are this, or Mormons are this, and so therefore I am that.
Right.
But just because you're part of something doesn't mean you espouse all of the principles that the group does. You still have to like work.
Yeah.
You still have to not be a dick, which I think is part of the problem, because some of the meanest people I know are also some of the most religious.
Yeah.
Lowercase r religious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I that was one of the things that I had a huge problem with. And a big part of the thing that drove me out of organized religion in that sense, just because Like what are we doing if we are all coming together to say that we believe these things, but then we're all going to go and do whatever we want for the week and be dicks to each other, and then we're going to come back and say how holy we are.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather just not associate myself with the group and just go do the thing. Like, if I'm being honest, I'm probably a better person from that in terms of, I don't really care about good or bad as a person, which is a whole other thing we can unpack later. But I'm in terms of that standard, like the Mormon standard, the religious standard, I'm probably a better person now than I was before, because at least now I'm honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm actively trying to not be a dick, whereas before I was actively trying to look like a Mormon. You know what I mean?
So, I think, we talk about that, and the judgment is something that, most religions say, leave, I don't know how they've worded it, but, I'll say it, how I think it would be, leave judgment unto the Lord.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And, but, we are all, it's a human trait to be judgmental.
Yeah.
And it's a human trait that I think we should try to work against. We should try not to be judged. I went out to a birthday going away party / birthday party for two different, birthday party for one person, going away party for somebody else. And so I was friends with the gal who's going away. She just finished. She's just got into Nashville yesterday. She just moved. And it was put on, it was this other gal it was her birthday, and it was this co-party, and we were a little annoyed by that. I'm like, just either have a birthday party or one, it's like half the people there didn't know it was a going away party for this other person, and it was really all about the birthday girl. And like her and all her friends, I'm sure that they were good people. I want to believe that, but they seem to be so fake and pretentious, and every part of their body had been modified and worked on, and I try not to be judgmental on that, but if I can look at somebody's body and say, well, those are fake, then in my mind, they don't look good anymore. They look like something that's been created. It's but that's not, if they're doing it for themselves to make themselves happy, that's fine. But everything about, my point is, I was really judged. I felt bad. I felt dirty when I left, not because of them, but because of me, because I was so judgmental. And so that's one thing I say. That's one of the problems with most religions, is it's not the religion itself; it's the people in the religion. It breeds this. I know some Mormons that aren't this way, and I know some that are this way, where they're insular in a little bubble, and anything outside is bad, just because I've been told. And so I judge those things that outside. But me being inside the religion would judge those things outside. Anything outside is bad, and I'm judging them. And you're a bad person, just like the kid who told my son he was going to go to hell because we're burning in hell because he's drinking Mountain Dew. It's not for the human to judge others. Right. Unless you have that name on your desk, Judge so and so. Then you get to do that.
But and you think the interesting thing there is the only people in society, if we think of judging in that terms, those people have to get voted in.
Yeah.
So you don't decide to be the judge; somebody else decides for you.
Yeah.
If we use that,
but voted or appointed, I think, right? And that.
Well, some are. So circuit court judges are appointed, and local judges are elected. But anyway, for me, I think that judging is inefficient, because it's wasted energy. Like, why? What did you gain? You know what I mean? Like your example, I think you coming out of that and feeling dirty, like the way that my mind would process that is, I just wasted 3 hours of my life judging someone that I don't care about.
Yeah.
Like, what difference does it? I don't care about these people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I care about them in so much as that they are my friends' friends.
Right. Well, I would save them from a burning building.
Right. But only because, I still don't care about them individually any more than I care about anybody else. And that's not to mean I don't care. But I'm just saying that, like, it's they have an influence and an effect on my friend, and therefore I do care about who they are. And I don't know. Sure, I didn't like how I felt.
Sure. But I think it's just, you approach it from feeling like you, and I think this is fine. You approach it in like I feel bad because I did these things, because it doesn't line up with your worldview, which I think is right. You're in tune with your own worldview. That's the point, right? And it doesn't matter if it's I feel bad or I feel like I wasted time. I
Yeah.
think the point is having the worldview that guides you. That's not, like if you're going to espouse the tenets of some religion or some political ideology or some group, some cult, it doesn't really matter what it is. But it should be like with the example of my brother in the car. If you're going to drive a Honda Civic, it should be because you chose to drive the Honda Civic and not because somebody else gave it to you and you just are too afraid to go try something else and just see if that's the right thing for you. Most of the time, what you start with is not what you want. The math is just against you.
That's oftentimes what you're told you want. I can think of, my parents, for example, that my dad, if I had lived the life that he wanted, I would be working in a government job with a pension and, beige lifestyle.
Yeah.
But that's, he grew up in a time where that's what you did. You were loyal to a company, they were loyal to you, and we don't live in that time anymore. I mean, there's a few out there that still treat people, employees with respect, but shareholders win and you lose your job.
Yeah.
Because of numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
And there's no loyalty anymore.
Right.
And so, I decided what was right for me, not because, I've always bucked what others told me I should do, listened, evaluated, but it wasn't always what was right for me. My dad was happy that I was going to college, not happy that I was studying art.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, I've taken that art degree, and turned it into something, that helps businesses. And it's not, art, I say art, it was communication arts and design, but it was in the School of the Arts. I was going to school with people studying sculpture and painting and everything, but mine was more business oriented. But he was definitely not happy. He was like, I don't know how you're gonna make a living doing this, son. And it's true, I've struggled this past year, but I've always made more than enough money to get by and made more, been successful. It's been some years that I've been very successful at it. But my point in all this is that there are people that just accept it, and they make great government workers. I worked state government for 6 months, and it was funny, for like the first month I was excited to be there, and then I realized, if they gave me my week's worth of work, I could leave by Tuesday at lunch and not come back. But I had to punch a clock, so that wasn't going to happen. And I got to the point where I got so I can't. I felt guilty because I'm getting paid taxpayer dollars to do this stuff, and I'm not. There's not. I can't. It's my coworkers were telling me to slow down, and I thought I was moving slow.
Yeah.
In that quagmire. But after 3 months, I got to the point where I was almost becoming assimilated. Right. It was like, I don't like this. And so, and funny, I was like, I got to the point where I could just keep doing this, and this is easy now. It wore me down. Not in a bad way, like an evil way, but I was like, I just could keep doing this. And so I get the mindset of people that, a lot of people, a lot of situations, people don't want to have to think about what they're going to do, why they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They, my brother was in the Army for his career, and it was much that kind of thing. It's like, you go to prison, you get told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and you don't have to worry about it. There's no stress. Well, there's stress, I'm sure. If you're in prison, there's going to be stress. That's a dumb thing to say, no stress, but no stress in knowing what your next day is going to look like.
Right.
Or
I think the stress of needing to worry about anything that comes with it. What to expect. Yeah. And it's going to be consistent, and this is the way that it's going to roll. And the nice thing, to go back to the judgment thing, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it objectively, to be in a position or in a job that is consistent and that works for you. There's nothing wrong with that objectively, but the problem is when you let that mindset spill over into everything that you do and think. Like if you're not, I think a lot of it comes back to being self-aware. If you know that you would rather, you can make that choice. You can just go get a job and you could do this. You could make this choice and say, the entrepreneurial life isn't for me. There's too much up and down. I just need something consistent, and I'm just going to turn my brain off to it and use my extra time to maybe build something on the side, right? You could make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that choice. The problem is when your brain shuts off and you stop exploring ideas and exploring things in every aspect of life. And you think, well, life should be like my job, which is consistent, predictable. The expectations are set. I know exactly what it's going to be. But if you're in that position, and look, I know that I'm not going to try and put too much work in, too much thought or creative energy into the work that I'm doing, because I want to save that for something else. Like that's a totally different conversation. But I think like when you talk about judgment too, I feel like a lot of it comes from ignorance, which is ignorance. A lot of the time is just, it's self-inflicted. Like you make a decision. Oh, I'm going to no longer think about this, and just spout off views and things like that. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think, I think you're right. You want to make sure you find what's going to work for you, because otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to spend 10 years in a job that you don't like, working for people that you hate, doing something you don't believe in, and someday you're going to snap.
Yeah. They call it going postal, right?
Yeah. That's what a midlife crisis is. It's all of the decisions that you didn't want to make coming to a head all at once, and all that frustration that's been building up coming to a head all at once, and you do dumb things. Right? Whereas if you just are honest with yourself and honest with the way you're thinking about things, and very aware of who you are and what you want, and then I think you can avoid a lot of that. And not that, if you're going to have a midlife crisis, you're going to have a midlife crisis. That's not the point. It's not, listen to what we say, because we're going to help you avoid a midlife crisis. It's more, I'm more concerned about my relationship with the human race than I am about any individual member of it. Like I'm more concerned that I'm part of something that that can be more efficient in its communication, in its internal communication, the way that we talk to each other, the way that we express our emotions. I feel like we can do a better job as a whole in all of that. And I just, there's a lot of that concept of, I'm not going to shop around for a new car because I have one and it's fine. Like, this is another example. And Sue, if you hear this, please don't be offended, because I mean this in the best possible way.
But who'd you say, who's going to hear it?
This is my girlfriend, Sue.
Oh, okay. Sue. Okay.
May or may not ever hear this. Probably not. But if she, because we're however an hour into this, so the chances of her lasting this long are very slim. Yeah. But we had a conversation recently about her looking at, this is the perfect metaphor, looking at other places to work, right? Looking around for, she has a job. It's a job in operations. She's really good at what she does. She's not just, people don't really value her as much as she is valuable. And so I said, why don't you go just look at some other jobs, just interview some places, like just take a look at some things. And we had this whole conversation, and we've had this conversation a couple of times. So this time I started out by digging in really deep on all the things she doesn't like about the job, just to build up the momentum, the emotional momentum to actually do this. At the minute I said, well, why don't you just, like, there's no commitment, why don't you just go interview at another job just to get an idea of what you could be worth somewhere else? She was like, no, I'm just going to ride this out, because I want to make sure that my 401k vests, and I want to do all these things. And meanwhile, like, we just had a conversation today. The people she works with don't approach the work in like a, let's get as much done as we can and do it well. And like she's very, very good at her job. And like impressively so. But the people around her are kind of like in that same mentality that you just described of like, I'm going to show up. Everybody just slow down a little bit. We're just going to do our thing. We're not trying to, show off or be better than anybody else. We're just
We don't want to set a benchmark that we don't want to have to maintain.
Exactly. We don't want any responsibility. I just want to know that I'm going to show up. I'm going to do this. The minute I start having to report on numbers, then I might not hit them and then I might get fired and blah, 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 right? All that stuff. And so I told her, I said, you're doing work. The amount of energy you put into your work is worth 4 times what you're making right now. And I told her, I know 4 companies that I could probably get you an interview at where they would offer you on the spot at least double what you're making right now. And you could start like immediately. But I said, no commitment, obviously. This is just so that you understand. So you can go back to your job with a new perspective, which is, I don't have to be here.
Yeah.
Like this is not necessary for me.
That changes your mentality so much.
Yeah, I don't have to be here. And so now your conversations with them are no longer around how can I please you and how can I bend over backwards to help you, and more around when are you going to help me? Like, why should I stay here? What's the point? I'm going to obviously do all my work and I'm going to do it better than everybody else does. But if I can go and in 2 weeks have a job that's paying me 2 or 3 times what I'm paying here, plus all the benefits, plus unlimited vacation time, plus I can do everything that I want and I don't have to worry about it. Why am I here? Why am I here?
Yeah.
Right. Because now at that point, if you come, and it's not because you want to quit that job necessarily, because she actually there's some parts of her job that she does like. At least, like, why not ask the question? And obviously, again, we're end conversation about Sue. This is now general, right? So I'm not speaking specifically to you, Sue. This is just general in, the idea. And she knows that I feel this way, because every time we have this conversation, I say, why not just see? But when you've expanded your perspective and expanded the horizons of the way you think about things, suddenly you're able to make more accurate decisions about what you're going to do next. Because now it's no longer like she might want to stay in that job. But now that she's gone out and got that, she has that perspective. This is what I'm worth. Now she goes back to her boss and she says, hey, I like working here. I think that I'm worth more and I want more responsibility. I want to do more and I want to be put in a better position. They might be sitting, waiting for her to come to them and say that, because they have some policy that says they can't just offer it. Like the person has to come request it, or she doesn't know, obviously.
Yeah.
So they might be just waiting. The only thing holding her back, or anyone back from what they want, is the concept and the perspective to go and ask for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I think one of the things that we used to do, so since I've lived in Utah, this, you've worked with me at that company. I had one job, one real job. And we would do this on occasion. This is kind of a funny offshoot of this conversation. Is we would go, we'd schedule a dentist appointment, or we take time off for a dentist appointment, and we come back to the office wearing a tie. That was always a fun little exercise.
Yeah.
Because it was funny, like almost invariably you walk in the office with the tie and you take it off and you put it in your desk drawer, because you don't wear a tie at the office.
Right.
At least there we didn't. And so you were seen, and invariably it would get back to you. It would get back to your boss that I think he was at a job interview.
Yeah.
and then suddenly, like, you start getting, it's indirect manipulation.
Right.
And a little shady, especially if you're not, if you're just going out to a long lunch and coming back with a tie on.
Right. Well, but anyway, at the same time too, you're feeling it. Like we have this general idea that we need to not rock the boat, and that if we shake things up, that the norm might go away, and then all of our stability goes away. Well, and I know, this is me practicing my own self-awareness. I know that I have made decisions that have put me in very unsecure financial positions in the past, and I've come through them relatively unscathed, right? So I'm coming at this with a different perspective. My perspective is, you can afford to shake the boat a lot more than you think you can.
Right.
100%. Like you can afford to be yourself. And in fact, personally, I think you can not afford not to be yourself and not to be fully and completely honest with who you are and what you want. Because number one, we live in a country of opportunity, and that is very, very rare that somebody, first of all, someone that would have the state of mind to be listening to this, you're fine. If you say something and it gets you fired from your job, you shouldn't work there anyway.
Yeah.
Not because there's anything wrong with the job, it's because there's misalignment. Because if you have to hold back, like somebody said, who was it? Somebody said something to me recently about, it's about the black eyes. I get this all the time. When I train, I get black eyes a lot.
Yeah.
And every single time I get one, I usually post a picture. And every time I post a picture, I get a comment from former colleagues, from people in the industry, from anybody. Are you allowed to have black eyes for work? Excuse me? Am I allowed to have black eyes for work? And even
let me pause for a minute. Every time when people start talking about black eyes, it sounds so similar to black guys. And so my brain always hears it that way, and it just starts chuckling because it's inappropriate, and and it's because you can't say black guys, in this day and age. Right. It's like if you're a white guy, you can't say black guy, and so when you're talking about black eyes, I hear it and it just makes me laugh because how stupid is it that
just as a disclaimer
thing.
We are allowed to have black guys at work. I just want everyone to know that. But even in positions where I'm either contracted or I'm actually an employee, I have never, even for a second, considered whether my hobbies would affect my ability to do my job.
Yeah.
Like I have never, and I started training when I worked with Frank Kern. I was an employee. I worked for Frank Kern. And I was in front of people a lot. And in fact, there was one conference. I did a full conference, 2 days in front of like 17 businesses. Where I had a black eye and I'd gotten, this is disgusting, so I apologize, but I'd gotten impetigo all over my face.
I don't know what that is.
Which it's like, it's a mild form of staph.
Okay.
And I was on medication, so it wasn't contagious, but I had like medication and bandages all over my face. And I ran this whole thing and it was fine.
Yeah.
Because I am not what I look like.
You were doing your job. You were doing a good job at what you were doing and facilitating the event. And
I knew that I was in a position where what was more important to the people that were signing my paychecks was, am I doing my job? Am I capable of doing my job? And they knew because I show up and I kill it and I do a good job at everything that I do. They knew that it didn't matter what I showed. In fact, one of the first ones I showed up to of these, I had someone that I worked with this person, and I won't mention names, who did not agree with my choice of tire.
Is this a she?
It's a she. And we had a conversation about it afterwards, and I was like, okay, whatever. And so for a couple of these, I dressed up a little bit just so that she wouldn't give me crap about it, and then went right back to just dressing however I wanted to dress, like just doing my own thing. And it didn't make a difference because she knew, even somebody that nitpicky knew that I'm going to show up, I'm going to kill it, and you can't do what I'm doing, and nobody here can. Right. So obviously that's also a bonus. But I think the big thing is, like, every time I get that question, like, does it cause, most of the time it's people that like don't know what I do for work. Are you allowed to have black eyes at work? And for me, that's not even I don't even think that should be a consideration. Like, am I allowed to live my life because of my job? Excuse me? Yes, I'm allowed to live my life even if I have a job. Like, and if there was ever a situation where I had a client or I was in a position or anything where I showed up with a black eye because of my hobbies and they were like, you should probably not do that, I would quit immediately. No questions. And it wouldn't matter, because more important to me is who I am and that I'm living my life. And it's not about being paid. It's not about making sure that I have, like, it's not even, this is one of the reasons why I have an issue with going full circle back to the first thing, which is this idea about duty. I cannot provide any, I cannot fulfill my responsibilities or my self-proclaimed duties if I am not in a headspace where I'm in control. So regardless of my ability to bring home a paycheck, I am 100% a dick if I'm not in charge. I know this. I know this because I put myself in situations where I'm not in charge, where somebody else is in charge of what I'm doing, and it just grinds me, and it grinds me fast. Like, I don't last very long. I'm not one of these people that could do a quarter century at a job where there's a boss that I hate. I couldn't do it. I would only last like 6 months.
Yeah.
That's been
my track record for jobs that I hate.
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah. And the
I've
thing
had
is,
a
like,
couple of
you
those.
have to weigh all the pieces, right? Because if you, it's not necessarily that you need to quit jobs that you don't like. It's more, you need to live your life. I think everybody needs to live their life and let the pieces fall where they will, because that's more honest. It's like I used to say with working out. I have a philosophical problem with working out just to work out, like bodybuilders, but bodybuilders that aren't professional bodybuilders, because it's false. It's manufactured. Like, for what purpose are those muscles?
Yeah.
They don't serve the purpose that they're there for. Right?
Vanity.
Yeah. You should have muscles because you lift things, not because you want to look like you have muscles. Like, why do we want to look like we can lift large things? Why not just lift large things and then you'll look like what you're supposed to look like? Because it's not even, the stupid thing is, people don't realize this. The size of your muscles has nothing to do with your strength.
No, it doesn't.
You know,
I mean,
like,
there's
to a certain extent, it does.
Yeah, but it's not, it's my understanding is bigger muscles can lift bigger things fewer times. A runner can run, can move a whole lot more mass a lot farther than somebody who has these, they can't put their arms down by their sides.
Right.
And frankly, those kind of giant inflated muscle looking guys, there's not much that they can do where those are of value.
Right.
Other than girls get excited about them.
Right. Well, now, and here's the caveat with everything that we talk about.
Some girls.
If having that mass and if looking like that is the thing that you want out of life, more power to you.
It makes you happy.
It makes you happy. I don't think it matters. But at the end of the day, there is probably another activity that might make you more happy. Because, and I say this only because it's the whole thing is built around building a vanity attribute. Like, you want to look like you're something that you're not.
It's hard to find true happiness in things that are surrounded by vanity.
So, like me, for example, when I do my kickboxing, when I do Muay Thai, I don't lift weights. I run, kind of, because road work is a part of the thing, and trainers always want you to do it, and it doesn't actually help you as much as anybody says that does, but you do it because this is one of those things you just like, I'm just going to do it because I don't want my trainer to yell at me. It's fine. It's good. It is good for you in some senses, so whatever. But I don't lift weights. I don't. I mean, I do like push-ups and sit-ups, but most of that is just because that's the motion. Those are like the motions that I'm actually going to do when I'm fighting.
Yeah.
I would rather look like a fighter, not because I worked out to craft that, but rather because I fight.
Because it's what you are. It's what you do.
I look like a fighter because I'm a fighter. And if I don't look like a fighter, it doesn't matter because I am one.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. You don't need to prove it.
Yeah, I don't need to prove it to anybody what I look like. You know what I mean? And
that's a big pitfall. And I've been in that. I've fallen victim to that, is feeling like I've got to prove something to somebody. The only person you need to prove anything to, if you need to prove something to somebody, is you.
Yeah.
You just got to believe in yourself. That's when I say, as far as believing, having something to prove, believing, in something is important. Believing in yourself is important.
Yeah, and I feel like when you lose the need to prove anything to anybody, suddenly this weird, funny little thing happens where you start proving it. People just, it becomes an expectation in other people.
Yeah.
Like when you stop trying to prove to somebody that you are something and you just be it. This is one of the reasons why I say I'm probably a better person now from a religion standpoint than I was when I was a Mormon, is because I stopped caring about what I looked like. I stopped caring about appearing to be righteous and started caring more about not being a dick. And funnily enough, I'm less of a dick now than I was before.
I've never thought you were a dick, just by the way. It's
Well,
never.
I'm a lot. I know just from my own experiences, it might just be even in my own head. I'm much less of a dick in my own head about other people than I
Okay.
ever was before, and it's because I'm not trying to. Because this is an absolute truth that I think might help to sink this point home. From a religious standpoint, sometimes the only way to do the right thing is to look like you're doing the wrong thing and be okay with it. It doesn't matter what you look like. If you're doing the right thing, that should be enough. But the problem, I think, especially with, I can only speak to really to Mormonism, is that it's more important to look like you're doing the right thing than it is to actually do the right thing.
Yeah.
So, so like the thing with the word of wisdom, it's more important to never drink, to abstain from coffee and tea and smoking and drinking, but it's not as important to like exercise or like not be morbidly obese. I don't know if you've picked up on this, but there's a large percentage of Mormons that are morbidly obese.
Yeah.
And it's because I personally think it's because they focus too much on don't drink coffee and tea and they think they're good.
Yeah.
I think that's the extent of their
And it's
health.
puzzling to me that, in this, where, other things that they're supposed to abstain from, it's my understanding, is porn, drugs.
Yeah.
And in this state, we have the highest porn use per capita in the country. It's from what last statistics I saw, and one of the highest, if not the highest, over-the-counter prescription abuse for opioids.
It's the highest by a large margin.
And I don't want to say that's because of the religion, but the religion is the dominating factor in the state. So there's got to be some, like say causality isn't. Yeah, it's whether that's is what it is, or maybe it's all the other people, not the Mormons. I don't believe that. The statistics prove that otherwise. But yeah, trying to be something, trying to look like you're something, the big muscle guy or the devout Mormon. Our friend Ross, Mormon, and he is. I love talking to him talking with him about religion, because he's open-minded and he's not offended by my views. I'm not offended by his, and we get to, and like you were with us in San Diego when we had that house out there, and it was me and a house full of Mormons.
Yeah,
that was so awesome. I mean, first off, like the Mormons that I know are almost always invariably just good, warm-hearted people.
sure.
That care about each other, and and I'm sure there's some judgmental stuff in this, because I'm judgmental, so I can't fault people for that. But being able to have these open conversations about religion, and not not having people offended by my views.
Right.
When I state something and they ask questions, and I can elaborate on it and speak educatedly about it, about my views and why I believe them, and hear their views, and not think or act on on it, even if I did think they were stupid, not acting on those thoughts. But there's rarely any time that I've ever thought that. It's just it's a different way of looking at things, and some people need different things to hold them accountable, and whatever that is. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, but that's actually, so I was going to suggest for our next call, let's talk about how to listen to each other, because that's, in my opinion,
I like that.
One of the biggest problems we have. I hate saying that phrase. One of the biggest problems we have in this country, but it really is. It is. We have a division in this country that is. It's not getting any better. It's widening. The gap is widening, and people are so offended by other people's points of view. People are so afraid to hear what other people think. I myself, there are people's points of view that I'm offended by, but I definitely want to hear them and understand where they're coming from. I don't care if you're, David Duke. I want to understand. I want to talk to you about why it is that you believe these things, and so I can understand what it is that drives that motivation to think that way.
Sure.
Instead of just raging against it, because fighting against something, as we've seen, like the war on drugs, it just doesn't work. If you can embrace each other and for our different point of views, as long as they're not hurting somebody. Of course, some people are hurting other people, and that's happened. But I just think it's important that we all take a better find ways to listen to each other without getting angry. The anger part, and we've talked about creating that course on anger management. That's there's probably 2 levels of that. Is being able to be happy with yourself adds a lot to not being angry, but being able to allow yourself to be happy, knowing that other people think things that are different than you.
Yeah.
And not letting other people's thoughts, or even their thoughts about you, anger you. Like,
right. Yeah.
What somebody thinks about me is none of my business. Although if we want to have a conversation about it, love to talk about it.
Yeah.
About what you think, what you believe. The more we can learn from each other and understand each other, I think the better we are going to be, and the more control we can have over through our own government is would be grossly improved.
Totally.
So anyway, I like to talk.
And at the very least, we'll be able to talk to each other better.
Yeah. You and I think we have a good rapport. Like I think Ross. We talked about Ross, and he's another one of those people that I can have those frank conversations with and question and I think the more comfortable and rooted we are in our beliefs, and not just rooted in the beliefs, that's not a good word for it, but the more we understand our own beliefs at the core of what they are, the better we are, the less offended we're going to be when somebody thinks something else.
Yes.
I think that's with a lot of religions, there is a weakness that not in religion in itself, but how they're taught, and a lot of beauty in religion. I mean, a ton of it's amazing the good that comes out of it. So I'm not saying some people might hear what I'm saying sometimes and think I'm saying religion's bad. I think it's not. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's just not something I bring into my world, that way.
Right. Because it's the implementation. I think I did an article or something, or at least I thought about it. The difference between capital R religion and lowercase r religions it's a matter of implementation. But I think I love the idea of talking about how to listen to each other. I think starting off with that, obviously you and I, we're going to go where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, we do that.
Starting there. Well, we're going to see how well we listen to each other by how the conversation does go.
Maybe we can
live case study.
Maybe we could even do one of these later on down the road where we bring in 2 people that have vastly different points of view.
Oh, I love it.
And try to not to moderate in a traditional fashion anyway, but to be able to see, maybe we create some ideas behind how 10 ways to listen to each other, and maybe we and then put those to test.
Yeah. I love live testing, because the funny thing too is you and I are nothing more than a couple of dudes who think about things, and we wanted to talk about it in a live setting. So we're not experts. We're not like the global universal authority on how to listen to each other. So we might come up with 10 things, and 4 of them are like, this is bull crap. This
doesn't work.
It doesn't work in practice. But I think, again, the core is you and I. One of the things I think that makes it easy for us to talk to each other is that neither of us is so attached to the way that we think that neither of us is afraid to test our thoughts, because neither of us is attached to the outcome. We have a thought, we think this is the way that it works, and in theory it works a certain way. But what we want more than anything is to know, we want it to work. We want it to be something that's actually going to be helpful to people. And I just want to know the right way for me to talk to people so that I can be more effective in my personal communication. So
I one word, sums all that up. When I'm looking for conversation with somebody, and I don't want the conversation to me be just me helping them, or just I want growth.
Growth.
And if I'm not growing in the conversation, then then it is truly altruistic because it's one-sided.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, John has done a masterful job at bringing us all the way back around to full circle, talking about growth. Grow yourself, grow your heart, grow your spirit, grow your brain. We'll see you next week.